Board members ready? Mr. Thomas. We call the Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Board members present this evening is Mr. Bobby Popovitz, representing the Port Royal District, Mr. Ford Thomas, representing the Mattapan District, Mr. Jeff Seeley, representing the Bowling Green District, Mr. Maxie Roselle, representing the Reedy Church District, and I'm Wayne Akers, and I represent the Madison District. I'm going to ask Mr. Ford Thomas if he would lead us in invocation this evening, after which we'll have a Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Thomas.
Let us pray. Dear Father God, we come before you this day. Just as you said, 2 or more have gathered in your name, and we know you'll be there. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for your many blessings. And now, Lord, as we do business for the county, we ask that you give us your guiding wisdom and your pure heart so that we may do what's right in the county, and all may see what we've done is in your name. These and all blessings we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Let us stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is amendments to the agenda. There are none this evening.
Mr. Chairman, there are no amendments, but item K in the consent agenda, we're placing before you an updated version of the original document. County attorney and or the finance director can go through what changes are there when the appropriate time comes, but that is the only thing that's been added before you.
Okay. Really? Opening board comments. Mr. Popowitz?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Thomas?
Just want to make the board aware that I was at the Special Olympics on Saturday, and I asked Mrs. Jenkins to post pictures of that on the website so we could share those with the community. It was a very touching event for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, so I was happy to share.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Seeley?
No, sir.
Mr. Roselle? And I have no opening comments either. Presentations and reports. Mr. Stunkel, VDOT monthly report. Good to have you this evening.
Good evening. I've got updates on a couple of traffic engineering issues that are a carryover from last month. One, the curve warning sign on Mount Gideon Road on the south end is back up. The other is the intersection of 639 and 207. Traffic engineers completed their study, and of course I had told you last month that it didn't come close to meeting any signal warrants. What they have recommended doing, and the signs have already been ordered, is put intersection warning signs on westbound 207 with plates on them indicating 800 feet in advance to notify those motorists that they're approaching the intersection. So those signs should be up here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And that's all that I really have to report tonight.
All right. Mr. Popowitz, do you have any questions or comments from Mr. Stunkel?
No, sir.
Mr. Thomas?
No, I don't. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Seeley?
Yes, sir, I have a couple.
All right.
First of all, good evening, Charlie. I had a call from a constituent that lives on Coolwood Drive or Lane, and we've looked at, he has a right-of-way that his parents deeded a long time ago to VDOT, and it's causing him some erosion issues and the ability to actually do some work on his property. What I'm curious, can you tell me what the likelihood of abandoning this, since it's a 30-year-old easement granted to VDOT?
This was an issue that had come up several years ago, and the board at that time had actually advertised and held a public hearing on the proposed abandonment of this. And after receiving public comments, voted to take no action to do the abandonment because it would have some adverse impact on adjoining property owners.
You know, I've talked to Mr. Fincham, and I know he's talked to you, and that's the first time I've heard that comment in the last 3 months.
Yeah, I forget exactly when it was, but we can go back and I can let you know exactly when that hearing was held.
I mean, VDOT's never going to do anything with that easement, is that true?
We're utilizing all of the right-of-way that that we have.
Is the state maintaining all of that right away?
Yes.
Because I understand there's an erosion problem, and I've had several folks out there to look at it, and it's a continuous erosion problem that's not been solved by the state.
I'm not aware of any erosion problem.
I mean, I've had 2 folks from the county out there to look at it.
Wouldn't it have been nice to have told us if it was
Well,
our problem?
again, Charlie, Mr. Fincham and you, I know, have had this discussion. And until tonight, this is the first time I've heard anything about this. And I haven't seen any right-of-way issues that were going to be impinged upon in my exploration of this in the last couple of months. I would again like to consider, Mr. Chairman, the vacation of that easement. It's not been utilized. It's been 30 years. I think if VDOT was going to do something in 30 years, I think it should have been done and they should have maintained it. And it's not been maintained.
Where we have an easement is where the road is. We have no easement beyond the existing cul-de-sac.
Mr. Fincham, can you help here?
We've had, I guess, the same conversations with the property owner at the end of Carrollwood Lane. And I think Mr. Stunkel is well aware of the individual at the end of the property or the end of the road, and it's been an ongoing, I guess, complaint by the property owner about the original right-of-way dedication to VDOT, and about apparently there are some claims there that there were some promises made about some improvements that would be done that the individual alleges has not been done. I believe the public hearing was back in 1988 on this particular issue, late 80s from what I recall. And that pretty much is where we're at. I mean, the owner has contacted, I think a number of people and has had discussions over the years, expressed his concerns about the, as I said, work that was supposed to be done that's never been done. He does have some concerns about some erosion that's coming off the road on his property, and as I understand it, actually wants to build a pond and enclose the property.
Correct. I mean, we're talking 1980, that's 20 years ago, more than 21 years ago, let's even be more precise. And I don't see VDOT having any more money today than they had 21 years ago. And if it's not been maintained up to this point, bringing it up now is an issue when somebody's asked to have that vacated, I think is sort of on the shy side of doing something. Is there going to be an issue if we go to a public hearing to vacate this easement, Mr. Stunkel?
I think you're going to hear opposition to it from the adjoining property owners.
But it's the VDOT easement and it's the VDOT care that I'm the most concerned about. I mean, okay, we had a public hearing, you said a few years ago, it was 21 years ago, so that's more than a few. And I don't understand how does this affect other property owners, I guess is my question now then, if it's a VDOT easement?
That where he would propose that the road end would effectively landlock an adjacent property on the opposite side of the road.
So before the easement, was it landlocked?
The road is on our easement.
Okay, but the road we're going to leave, I heard no concern about the road.
Well, then you have not understood the full thing. He wants to shorten the road.
VDOT hasn't done anything with it up to this point. I mean,
We've reconstructed it. It's hard surfaced, and we maintain it as it is.
I think part of the issue, Mr. Seeley, is there is some difference of opinion between the property owner in question and perhaps his understanding of what the improvements that VDOT was going to make to the road.
Right. They were supposed to put a circle in and some other things at some point in time that's never happened. My understanding is that's what the easement was actually given for, was a turnaround at the end of the road. Am I correct?
The right-of-way, they basically gave additional right-of-way all the way up to the existing end of state maintenance. Then we went in and reconstructed the road and hard surfaced it.
So the erosion issues, what do we do?
I can go down with Mr. Stunkel if you'd like, and we could take a look at the property to see whether there's anything that can be done. I would suggest that, at least in today's, well, let me not suggest that. Without, I think, a drainage easement through the property, it's going to be difficult for VDOT to do anything. And what you have is his field that's planted, and there's an area where there is some runoff from the road that goes down through his field that you would have with any similar situation. I think without a drainage easement, and I won't get into what the VDOT requirements are for a drainage easement, we'll discuss that next month on some other issues. Without him actually granting an easement to VDOT, it's going to be difficult to address that issue. Granting a drainage easement probably conflicts with what he wants to do with the property downstream or down below the road, as I understand it.
Right.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Seeley?
Sure.
Is the fact that, you know, I think the rest of us sitting here in the blind, not knowing who this party versus that party, the other party, and somebody else's party is, could you maybe get with Mr. Stunkel and Mr. Fincham and try to work this out, because it appears it's much more complicated than originally thought that it was going to be.
I guess I will do that now, Mr. Ickers, but up to this point, it wasn't an issue. And tonight was the first time this was an issue, and we've been rolling this around for 3 months.
I understand. Well, you've been rolling around with somebody else, I don't think with this board.
No, but tonight was supposed to be the conclusion of this. Okay. And it's not the conclusion, it's yet another stumbling block, and it's news to me.
I understand. But if you don't mind, if
not a problem,
we'll do that, and then if you need the board resolution or anything else to help you along, then just bring it back to the board and we'll go from that point on. But I just think it's better to work it out between Mr. Stunkel and Mr. Fincham and yourself, and possibly the property owner, and we'll move ahead. Okay?
I have one other
Sure, go ahead.
At the end of Milford Street, where it turns, there's a jog to go straight in and go to the left, the old part of Milford Street that's still there.
Yes.
I had a constituent call who's actually, when I got there, figured out that was actually Mr. Thomas's. But the holes at the end of that road were challenging for my big four-wheel drive truck. There are 3 enormous. And they've been told that was a private drive, but it's clearly marked with a road sign, and there's 5 or 6 houses back there.
Now, this isn't is this Old Milford Street, or is this the street that leads off of Old Milford Street?
That is the question and topic. There are 4 or 5 houses down this short piece of what was probably Old Milford Street.
Okay,
And that there's a street name, and I just right now don't remember the name of it, but it's clearly marked. But you make the left off of current Milford Street, then you go, it's a straight jog, and then it's a hard left again.
that is a subdivision, and that street is private. It's never come into the system.
Even though it's got a street name. And it's got a VDOT street name on it.
Well, we don't have any street names, but if it's got a route number on it, that would be an indication it's in the system.
Street names are county names, Mr.
Okay.
Seeley. And so unless there's an actual route number assigned to it, it's a private street.
You know, I didn't see a route number, so I don't know. But can we see if that's even covered?
Yeah. That was a subdivision years ago that had come up as a potential rural addition. And at that time, I think that the residents were not really interested in having the street come into the system.
Okay. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. Mr. Rosell? And I don't have any other. Mr. Snunkle, thank you for
Thank you all.
coming before the board. The next item on the agenda is proposed changes to Fred Transit System bus routes in Caroline County. Ms. Beck, how are you this evening?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Beck. I'm the Director of Transit for Fredericksburg Regional Transit. Before you, in your packet, you should have proposed changes to the Fred routes. I'm not going to go through all of it, but just a couple of points I wanted to hit on. The new schedules that we have proposed to you are much easier to read. It's much easier for passengers to be able to follow the schedule. The other way, they were going one direction 1 hour, then another direction another hour. We took input from our drivers who drive the routes before we made these changes. It's better connectivity to the other Fred routes. It'll have six trips a day into the Fredericksburg area where they could connect at Lee's Hill to the different doctor's offices and everything that's up there. We're also proposing changes to the C2. Instead of doing 2 days to Dawn, 1 day to Port Royal, we want to do 2 days total to Dawn and Port Royal on the same day. And the service won't change. It's because we're doing more trips into Fredericksburg. The service to Dawn, because I see you looking at me for Dawn, will stay exactly the same because we won't be taking the C2 off the loops and bringing them into Fredericksburg.
Okay, questions of Ms. Beck? Mr. Thomas? He shook his head.
Oh, okay. No, last year when you were here, we had a discussion about the Belmont route and the money we had. It was a trial route. That was last year?
That was...
Year before last?
It was the year before last, for the feeder service, the
Right.
VRE.
Okay, and we stopped doing it last year then?
We didn't do it because we were turned down for the grant.
That's what it was, okay. Are we applying for another grant?
Your person on our board, on our PTAB, is supposed to bring that forward to us if there's anything, any kind of changes to your routes or any additions that you want to do. And that should be, our meeting is first week in November, so.
Okay. Because I know that's still a concern. What the plan was, it was Belmont, some of the lake communities maybe, and then right to the Fred's, right to the VRE station.
Right. And you know that was a political nightmare for me, so.
Welcome to my world. Okay, that's the one thing I was looking for, so we'll see if we can do anything with that. All right, thank you.
Mr. Seeley?
No, sir.
Mr. Rosell?
If you'd explain the Bella situation again? Where you say it would be 2 days in total?
Right, Dawn is,
Now.
right now, Dawn is 2 days, Port Royal's 1 day. We're going to do 2 days total, but they'll go to Dawn and Port Royal in the same day. But the service will be approximately the same, because we used to take 2 trips when it was in Dawn and Port Royal and send it up to Fredericksburg. Instead, it's staying down here.
Thank you very much.
Okay. No other questions? I don't have any. Go ahead.
Ms. Beck, we talked about this before, and it was the Bowling Green route going across the bypass and down the street. You said there was no place to turn around for that route, and the school buses were turning around there. Is there a way we could reconsider going further down? It's Chase Street as you leave Bowling Green.
Okay.
It's really Milford Street in the county, and then it turns to Chase Street in the town. It's Route 619. And as that crosses over the bypass, there were people on that side that wanted of the road that wanted access
To the other side.
Right, but our discussion was the Fred buses couldn't turn around there, and I was back there one time and I saw a school bus turn around. I figured they're short.
Did it back
long.
up? Did the school bus back up?
Conceivably.
Okay, because conceivably, we don't back out buses.
At all?
For insurance reasons, we don't back.
So if there were a road that you could turn in and kind of make an almost U-turn, you'd keep going.
Right. Didn't we have that, I thought we had that discussion the last time about...
Yeah, but you didn't do it, so I have to
Yeah.
keep discussing it until you do. So that's really what I'm trying to say is, can we maybe go out
You
to
want
the-
to fix the road so we can turn around?
We just let Charlie go. So, I think maybe that's some consideration. It's probably close enough without turning around.
Okay.
You're saying you can't back up
We don't
because of
back the
insurance?
buses,
Is that because like most normal city buses don't back up?
pretty much.
Okay.
Chase Street.
Chase Street, the other side of the bypass, I guess it would be the north side of the bypass.
Okay.
But there's a trailer park and something else back there where they wanted some access to Fred. And we might find a way to actually loop around, which would be better.
Okay.
But I'll just work directly with you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike, who's that member on the board?
Who's the member on the board since Dennis left? I can't remember her name. Since Dennis left? Angeline.
Oh, Angelina's, huh?
Or myself.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead. Got it.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. We appreciate you coming down. And I don't know if the board has any problems. I don't have any problems with what you're doing, and it appears the rest of the board members are in agreement with the changes you want to make. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Update on status of Rappahannock River water intake permit project and water and wastewater master plans. Mr. Borcher?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Got 2 update reports for you this evening. The first one on the intake project. The direction on that is to get it to a point where we can at least temporarily stop until we look at what the overall master water plan is going to be, but stop at a point that actually makes it a real stopping point instead of just cutting it off. So we have 2 studies that are in the process of being completed. One is what we refer to as a fish study. You can look at the word that they use, ichthyoplankton population impact. I can't spell that without looking at it, but anyway, the fish study and also the intake entrainment study, which essentially is a study to look at the efficiencies and the volume of water drawn in by various screen sizes for intakes. The go-ahead has been given to the consultant several months ago to complete those studies. They are finalizing, gathering the information that they need to get draft reports together. I've got a timetable for what they are anticipating completion on them. They're looking at the draft report for the intake screen study to be submitted in December, and the draft report on the fish study to be submitted in January. After the review by the county, there will also, on the fish study, be at least one meeting with regulatory agencies, DEQ personnel, so that they can review the impact of the fish study and see whether that's going to create any additional issues that they want to bring up. But we feel that once those two studies are done, DEQ will have the information they need and will be able to at least put it on a temporary pause until we go ahead with the master planning. As far as the master planning goes, well, I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions on those two studies on the Rappahannock.
Questions of Mr. Borsham? Are you ready to keep going?
Okay, on the water and sewer master plans, we've met with the consultant who will be doing that. They've been through our current master plans, and we've sat down with them and discussed some of the things since the current master plan went into effect, some of the things that have gone kind of as planned, other things that still remain to be done. We've looked at options that we are currently considering, such as the intake. We've also discussed some other options on the water and the wastewater sides that they might want to include in going forward as far as our final build-out master plans would be. I have received a detailed scope of work from them, which is being reviewed right now. As soon as we are finished reviewing that and get back to them, we will be getting a cost proposal for the two plans, but they already have, as far as information that they need, we've been gathering it and getting everything ready for them. So once we can get the estimate on the proposal for the scope of work, then we can bring that forward and get approval and move on with that.
Okay. Question?
Not really a question. Well, yeah, I guess it was a question. Did they give us an indication of how long the study would take to finish up a complete water and wastewater plan yet?
We discussed it not in real detail because we hadn't finalized the scope at the time, but when we discussed it, we were looking probably in the 9-month range.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. Go ahead.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Borsham. Mr. Thomas, you have a question?
I was just trying to find, there was a mention of Haymount again. I was trying to find that again. Give me 1 second.
That was probably mentioned in the intake study issue. Yes.
And what was their status, since I'm still looking for it?
Well, the Haymount project has with it a wastewater treatment plant, which is located in the vicinity of where our intake will be. And so once we do move forward with that, one of the issues that will be remaining with DEQ is what we need to do to compensate for the close proximity of that discharge, how to handle that.
And that's what I just found. So thank you. It is their location for discharge will have to be changed based on our location for intake.
Very likely, yes.
Okay. All right. And we haven't heard anything from Haymount in the last 10 years, have we? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Borsham. Appreciate it. Mrs. Carter, I believe that you're going to discuss Chapter 103 of Code of Caroline County. It's a pleasure to see you this evening.
You too, Mr. Akers, and everybody else. I guess we're going to get to know each other a lot with the county changing as much as it is and as fast as it is. I'm not sure if you have copies of this tonight, but we actually thank you, Mr. Ashcraft. We actually in 1998 passed an emergency ordinance that I have found to be a complication in administering what I need to do. In the ordinance, in 108 of Chapter 103, it is allowed for in